Welcome back, everybody, to Poddin My Noggin. This is CK Sims, and thanks again for tuning in. This week, it's just me. Now, last week was a lot of fun with Jen Lord. If you haven't seen that one yet, I would definitely check it out. But this week is just me, and I think that that's enough. So we're going to talk about something today that I feel pretty passionate about, and that's change. It has nothing to do with change management, which I'm also certified in, but um, it's the kind of change that's not external because we have absolutely no control over that. But it's the kind of change that happens within. And so I want to get into it with you because I feel like this is a topic that could definitely help a lot of people. And knowing that change is possible. So we're going to get into change today. And we're going to start back many moons ago, like many moons ago, when I was a child. So as a child, for me, I had a big personality similar to who I am right now. And with a big personality, in a very small rural town, community village, really, in Newfoundland, with preacher parents, we were not properly paired, if you will. Um, my parents didn't know what to do with me. Most people did not know what to do with me. I had a big personality. When I was a kid, I was very young. I had a very big vocabulary for that particular age. Loved reading. My father worked about an hour away, and like I remember, for the beginning part of my childhood, he would bring home books almost every single day, and then he or my mother would read them to me. So loved reading even back then. And that love of reading stayed with me throughout life. There was obviously a gap in time when I wasn't reading, but and then writing. I think that that's where the initial part of wanting to be an author came from, is the being able to create these sort of places, these sort of stories where people can get lost in. So I think that that's where becoming an author and that passion and that dream really came from. Um, Now, also with having a big personality, being a preacher's kid, and also being feminine. I've always been feminine my whole life, and it's something that I really struggle with even to today. Um, this is my third podcast, so I have edited two podcasts, and watching back those podcasts have been both equally painful and then equally healing as well. And I'll explain that to you real quick. It's just, for me, being feminine as a child, I was bullied relentlessly. And we changed schools so often, not because of performance issues, but because my parents were ministers. So we took a new church every 1, 2, or 3 years. So I always felt like I was the new kid. I was made fun of, by my brother. I was made fun of by kids at school really rudely. Um, and I was made fun of, even by extended family, like aunts and uncles, one particular uncle for sure. And so being feminine, and then knowing from a young age as well that I was gay. At first, I didn't know what that was. I was just, different. Um, Having that, and then the religious component of it, which I said, I'm not going to talk about because I have strong views, and which this is very true. I do have strong views on religion, but the religious programming that I had when I was growing up was that being gay is a sin. You're going to go to hell. You're an abomination and depravity of God. So all of this was mixed into, people bullying me. So um, those were things that sort of set the stage for when I was a child. And so now while I'm, editing and putting these things out and I'm watching my mannerisms back when I'm being recorded, or this thing that I didn't even realize I do with like rolling my eyes up in the back of my head when I'm trying to think or find the words. I talk with my hands a lot. I'm animated, all of those things. And it's really uncomfortable because that is something I've not dealt with prior. I've not I, I've not had to see myself on video. I've not had to see myself, I guess, reacting to things. Interviewing Jen Lord, last week was really interesting because watching that back, I get so fired up by like wonderful, strong, incredible people. And Jen Lord is that type of person. So like you can see if you're watching that podcast that I'm extra animated and I'm so powered up and so revved up and I'm so in like myself. I'm 100% myself in that um moment, and I'm like, oh gosh. I'm like, and the question I pose is, why do you have to be so gay? Right? And then I'm watching it back and I'm putting it out there and I'm also having in the same breath, having a moment where I'm like, this is you though. Like when you get excited because something resonates with you, or, you know, the way you talk, the way your voice sounds, the way you act, the way your hands move, the way you flutter your eyes, like all of that's you, that's me, right? Like that is who I am as a person when the camera's off and I'm not filming, or that's just who I am, and I'm never conscious of that when the camera's not filming me and I'm not watching it back. So I think what's going to happen is I continue to show up and record these podcasts and be 100% authentically myself. I think a part of me is going to learn to accept that this is really who I am. And I have no interest nor the energy to change that about myself. And this is growth for me because I think for so long there was always that element. A lie that I told myself was that, I'm not obviously gay, right? Um, which was a lie and is a lie. And but like that sort of was like my armor, my way of protecting myself. I'm like, and then I think over the years I came to realize if I just stand still and like walk somewhere, and I haven't filmed myself walking, so if that ever happens in the future, I'll let you know how I look when I walk. But um, it's just this is who I am. And someone we're going to talk about in a little bit helped me really realize that after they viewed my last podcast. And so I think I don't have the energy to change my mannerisms. This is 42 years of mannerisms. This is 42 years of voice. Like I don't remember a time when I didn't talk like this. Some people think that gay people put it on. I've never made a conscious effort. Well, that's kind of a lie. I will, but we'll talk about that in a future podcast. There was one time I dialed it up for a guy, actually, my first date. But anyway, I didn't consciously choose to talk like this. I didn't consciously choose to act like this. This is just who I am when I'm 100% relaxed and just being in the moment, right? And my first podcast that I recorded is also me. One of my best friends, Ludo, he often, in the beginning was like, when you're with people, you seem more animated, more high energy. And then versus when you're alone or like with one person. And you're much calmer and all of those things. And I had to explain to him that they're both authentic. It's I feed off of other people's energy in the sense, not that I'm an energy vampire at all, but what I'm trying to say is that if somebody's energy is upbeat or I get really excited about something, like this brings out that component of me. But then, Ludo, he has really calm energy. So being in a space on one-on-one with him, like his energy is calm, so I too am calm, right? That doesn't mean that I don't have my moments of getting really excited if something happens or we see something on TV or we're out and we witness something. Like I have my like animated moments, but I think it took a long time to make him realize that they're both very much real and genuine. They're just it's situational, right? When I'm at home by myself, and I'm just, writing, reading, living, I'm very chill, very quiet, all of those things. When I'm out with people, that energy invigorates me. Now, it also drains me. So there's like a sort of a very, like an in, not an infinite, a there's a window, a duration that I'm that way. And then, I need like a couple days to sort of recover and recharge back. So like, I'm very much the type of person that has to recharge, if I'm in social interactions. So going back to childhood, it's about, big personality, being feminine, and just sort of the bullying with paired with the religious programming that I am an abomination and depravity of God, which I have had said to me, and all of those things. Um, it sort of created like this self-loathing, right? Because I couldn't turn off being gay. I tried praying it away. I tried forgetting about it. I tried everything in my power to just not be gay. And then, you know, it doesn't work that way. Like, I am someone who is attracted to men, straight up. That's just what it is. That's who I am. And so when I graduated high school, I had been sort of persecuted, bullied, you name it. I had rocks thrown at me. Would have to like run from the school to the school bus to avoid getting hit by rocks by other kids. Um, there were sometimes there were people in the school that would sort of look out for me in a way, but like one really big sort of situation that has always stuck with me was this one girl in a small town that we lived in. She was a year or two older than I was, and we used to meet in this tiny village that we lived in and go for walks and runs, walks and runs. So when we were in the tiny village, we were buddies. We did stuff together, and I remember, as it will never ever leave me, was one particular day they came and they said, because we were at school and, your friends in the village, your friends at school now. Well, not exactly. So they came to me and we went for a walk and they just said, listen, like, I don't mind like hanging out with you in the village. And I'm obviously not telling you which village or town or community or anybody's names because this is in the past. But, you know, I'm going to come to you. I'm okay with, being friends with you in the village, but at school, I can't. I'm sorry. Like, I don't want people to get the wrong idea and like people are making fun of me and that sort of thing. So like, just like, don't talk to me at school, but, we can be friends in the village. And I mean, for so long, I was just desperate for friendship, attention, that I accepted it in that moment and internalized it, but never forgot it ever. And I think about that, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I should have told that person to go F themselves in that moment, which this version of CK would definitely do, with no question. But that version, that bullied, persecuted, feminine preacher's kid in a small town in rural Newfoundland, did not have the voice or the confidence to even think of such a thing. So if I could only be their friend in the village, then I was only going to be their friend in the village. And that was enough for me at that moment. And this was, pretty much my life, right? Because I felt like even at home, oftentimes, that I was okay as long as I accepted what I was given and played the part of being, a dutiful Christian son, right? So all of these sort of conditions when it came to like family life and school life and all of that stuff. And obviously, because I had a big personality, I always got in trouble. And when hormones kicked in, I was even 10 times worse without any sort of resources or friendships or guidance that could truly sort of say, okay, we're going to help you. We're going to figure this out together. I did not have that at all whatsoever. So, that was my childhood. And that set the stage for after I graduated. And so this is where things kind of go a little bit dark because after I graduated and I moved into St. John, Newfoundland, which is the only city. Mount Pearl's a city too, and people from Newfoundland may really hate me for saying this, but they are two separate cities, but they're literally, they touch each other in every way, shape, and form. So in my head, they're always one city. But however, when winter comes and snow removal happens, that's when they're two separate cities. So fellow Newfoundlanders, please don't hate me. So I moved into the city. So for me, after all of these years, I just decided that no longer would I be the one that was bullied. I was going to be the one who bullied. And I didn't know at that time that there was a middle ground. Okay. So I became a bully. And I was relentless. I was mean, heartless, cold. I used people. I was an opportunist. Lied through my teeth. And, this went on for years. I think, I moved to St. John's when I was 17 when I graduated high school. And then it was 26, 27 when things started to change. But in that 10-year period, I was not a good person at all. Now, I never did anything to physically harm someone or anything like that. But I was just like, and when I look back, it was just really awful. I was an awful person, and I've made peace with that because you have to make peace with your past. Your past is your past. You can't change it. Um, and I've spent many, many hours in therapy working through it. So, during that period that I was mean and like super gay and which is nothing wrong with that for anybody listening, just saying I was over the top. I got involved with the wrong crowds and the wrong people, but I was an instigator. I wasn't a victim in any of this. I got involved in drugs, and there was literally there was probably about 2 years of it, but then I always think about like this 6 month period where there wasn't a single day that I wasn't sober, that I was sober, sorry. And nothing like needles or any of that, but like we're talking, ecstasy, K, cocaine, some crystal meth, um, stuff like that, party drugs, if you will. And I partied a lot, like an incredible amount of partying. And then I remember that sort of stereotypical movie cliched moment when you wake up one day and you look in the mirror and you don't recognize who it is that you are. And I had that moment. And I wish I could say that after that moment, I changed and became a good person. Nope, that's not what happened. However, I did remove myself from the partying, the doing the drugs, like those type of people. I moved half an hour away, and during that time was still mean, was still calculated, was still using individuals, still lying to my teeth, through my teeth. Like, it all stemmed from being extraordinarily misguided, and then there was such a level of self-loathing, and I bared no value to myself. Um, and because I bared no value to myself, I did not see value in others. I just saw opportunity, right? Um, and it was just a really lonely decade, sense of there were a lot of wonderful and incredible people that I met during that 10 years who were so kind to me and so incredibly wonderful and generous and giving and helpful and incredible. Maybe I've said that already, but there were so many that if I could have understood those connections at that time, I would have been rich just by the connections and the relationships. But I didn't. So we did the drugs. So if you see me looking down, it's because I've made notes. And I have to make notes because my brain forgets things very easily sometimes. So one of the call outs I want to make is that 10 years, like I said, was a lonely 10 years. There were a lot of things that happened to me through circumstance where one could say or play the victim in that. But I wasn't a victim. And the call out here is that I was actually, everything that happened to me in that 10-year period was 100% self inflicted. Like, dumpster fire gong show, self inflicted. And I didn't know it at the time, right? I didn't know at the time because at the time I was thinking that the world owed me something somehow. Like, somehow I thought the world owed me something and that I was entitled to something. I don't know exactly where that belief came from, but it was the belief regardless. So pretty crappy, 10-year period, all self-inflicted, not blaming anyone. I made a lot of shitty decisions, mistakes, moves, like all of this sort of thing. So 2007, when Facebook sort of came around, I had heard a few people talking about it. And then one day I was like, okay, I'm going to check it out. So I check it out, I fill out my profile, I put up a picture, and then I get it. It's not many days later, but I get a message from a person that I had met when I was 17 years old living in St. John's. And there's a whole story there, but not for this podcast. So, this is Cindy, my best friend. And apparently, she saw my picture. She thought it looked like me. I changed a lot, but she was like, I'm going to send a picture. And her mom was the one who actually said, send him a message. So she sent it a message. We chatted a little bit, and then we realized that we were only literally an hour and 20 minutes away. We're going to sort of focus on, there's so many things I could tell you about that whole experience and perhaps future podcasts. I have a feeling that Cindy and Luda are going to be regulars because they're my closest people in my whole world, right? And my sister Rebecca, like these are the things. So, but we talked. I went and I visited her and her boyfriend at the time, and I wasn't doing so well, right? Like I wasn't doing so well in life, so the partying stopped. I had burnt all my bridges. I was living in an apartment in Etobicoke. Um, and like I was very much alone. That was it. Like there wasn't anybody really. Um, and I had succumbed to the anxiety and the mental health, which I in part blame the drug use for. I've never spoken to a doctor about it, like whether there's a correlation, but there has to be. Like I use ecstasy and MDMA and ketamine and all of that stuff like it was water, and it has to do something to your brain. But anyway, so here I was, state of depression, state of anxiety. I wasn't really leaving my house a whole ton. Um, this was a big deal. Anyway, long story short, I went to visit them. And in the weekend that I visited them, they had thrown a party with people that they were friends with. And I had such an incredible time. There was no drugs. There was um, Smirnoff Fire, which I don't know if you know about Smirnoff Fire. I don't think it's on the market anymore, but that stuff tasted amazing. But oh, the heartburn you would get. So there was Smirnoff Fire. So there were some drinks and that sort of thing, and we had such a wonderful time. And then I went back home to my little apartment alone, and I had this epiphany that I wanted a life like that. I wanted to be around like normal people who had normal lives, and that seemed healthy. Their lives seemed healthy. Their relationship seemed healthy. There wasn't drama. There wasn't drug use or shady situations or sketchy situations. Like it was very normal. And I realized I wanted that. And then I realized that the only way I was going to have that is if I faced facts. And prior to this situation, which I'm going to say something now that's going to sound very contradicting, and that's fine. But like the fact that I didn't want to go on medication, okay? I was avoiding it. And the reason I didn't want to go on medication is because I thought that antidepressants changed you. And I didn't want to be changed. Like in the way that I didn't want to become a zombie, or I didn't want to be a completely different person or lose my personality or anything like that. But that experience made me go see a doctor. I had already researched what medication I want, felt I needed. I went and saw a doctor. They prescribed it for me, and then I began that journey. Shortly thereafter, I ended up moving to this town where my best friend was, and I moved in with them. And so this is where change started happening in a different way. So, quickly recap: childhood, big personality, bullied, feminine, adulthood to date until I met Cindy again and moved in with her was a dumpster fire, shit show. A lot of things that were not good things happened to me that were all self-inflicted. I was an awful person, very lost, very misguided, calculated, just awful, cringy person. That's who I was. So when I moved in with Cindy, it didn't take me long to actually start noticing things. Noticing normal human emotion, noticing normal adult relationships, noticing normal adult responsibilities. And there was something that happened that I had never felt before and wasn't emotionally intelligent enough to know if I had. But I hadn't really. So, and Cindy would roll her eyes at this because she will say to you that I did all the work, not her. And I will tell you that that is true. I had to do the work. I had to make the change. I had to go through the fire to figure it out. But Cindy gave me something that I never had before. And as an adult now, looking back as being a child, perhaps I did have it. However, it didn't feel like it in the moment. But Cindy gave me unconditional love. And what I mean by that is that there was nothing that I could do that would make her stop loving me. And believe me, I tried. Obviously, if I were to harm her or her loved ones, her dog or anything like that, or harm somebody, that makes sense to me. But she accepted me for me, like 100%, for all my screw ups and fuck ups and bad decisions. And because, things didn't happen like with the snap of a finger. Change takes a long time to implement and, um, to make sustainable. But that unconditional love, when I realized it, because it was never articulated, it was something I realized. I'm like, oh, she literally accepts me for me, all of me, 100%. That was a catalyst. Perhaps the biggest catalyst in my entire life to wanting to be a different person, a better person. And I remember we were walking from Shoppers Drug Mart to her house and we were having a conversation, and Cindy back then was this major pushover and I was still a bully. And we had this just conversation about how she could do better with standing up for herself, like shifting more towards where I was at. And I could do better by shifting more towards where she was at. And that conversation made a lasting impact on me. And the reason is because I hadn't had someone that I could just talk about being so fucked up with before. Like, just in a non-judgmental way. Like, even to this day, I can have conversations with Cindy about absolutely anything. And it is a judgment-free zone. And it's two ways. Like, literal judgment-free zone. It's just conversations where you can talk about your deepest, darkest secrets. And, okay, you're still Curtis and I love you. Done. That's what it is. Or you're still Cindy and I love you. straight up. And I have that with Ludo as well. So this is the thing I didn't have before. So Cindy showing me unconditional love and giving me a safe space to just literally be who I was, make mistakes, and know that at the end of the day, I was going to be okay. I was going to have a place to come home to. I was going to have a friend to lean on, all of those things. And because of that, I made a conscious decision, which I checked in with her many times. I was never going to use this person because this person was good. I could not. And that was the first time I made a choice to say, no, that is not what this person deserves. They are offering up unconditional love to me without stipulations, but I am not going to use them. I am going to be the very best person I can be for them in a friendship. And so we can talk about it. I mean, I don't want to, for you to be here for the next 28 hours while I tell you about all of the different things. But Cindy offering me unconditional love is what initiated a change. It was the catalyst to a change. And that change did not happen overnight. As I've said before, it was many, 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 many years in the making. And then when I was 32, I was diagnosed with type 2 bipolar disorder. So I don't know if you've ever had that feeling where your whole life you question if there's something wrong with you. And I always thought there was something wrong with me. There had to be something wrong with me for the way that my brain worked and the way I processed information and all of that stuff. Anyway, I went to see a psychiatrist because I was having neurological issues. And we had 10, 12 sessions, an hour long. And then on the last session before treatment began, I went back and we sat there and we talked about things. And then he was like, okay, so based on the testing, based on the conversations that we've had, going back as far as I could remember, my earliest memories, all of those things, you have type 2 bipolar disorder. And in that moment, I was like, huh? I'm like, no. And I remember leaving there sort of like, I don't like this. I don't like this. And then it took me a little while and also conversations with Cindy to realize that all of these years that I thought there was something wrong with me, there was in fact something wrong with me. And I wasn't broken. I just functioned differently. So, the sad part about this piece of information is that after finding out that I was type 2 bipolar, I did the best I could with making a decision to not let this define me. Researched the heck out of it, read stories, articles, everything you possibly could about type 2 bipolar disorder, how it manifests, like what the triggers are, like what's going on with me. But the other side of it was medical professionals now thinking, okay, well, he has type 2 bipolar disorder. We're going to put him on every piece of medication that we can think of. And this snowballed. And I was still depressed and had SI, before all of this. And I'm going to have to add a trigger warning to this now. But and anxiety as well before all this. And then they put me on the medication, and then I literally became a zombie, like a walking zombie. And then we talked about turning 35 and why that turning 35 and what happened at that time was such a pivotal sort of moment in my life on my first podcast. So I won't talk about it now. You can go listen to the first podcast. With the turning 35 and that happening to me, to recap really quickly, Cindy offered me unconditional love, which was a catalyst for change. So the desire there was that I wanted to be a better friend, a better person. I wanted to do better. Okay. And Cindy was my sort of guidepost in that because Cindy's an incredible human being. Like, don't even know why she gave me unconditional love to start with, but incredible human being. And I wanted to be an incredible human being. I wanted to be someone who was kind and wonderful and just all of the things that she has. But also, I wanted to at least meet her where she was giving me, right? So that didn't work out for a while, but there was still change happening, right? In me internally, all of those things. It was all leading up to it. So then at 35 happened. And then that's when I had an internal, like, deep, messy, ugly change. And I say ugly because it wasn't comfortable, it wasn't pretty, any of those things. So that milestone for me is why I am who I am today. But I wouldn't have had that milestone without Cindy. And I wouldn't really have had Cindy if I didn't have that decade that's sort of not so great. And then I wouldn't have had that decade that was sort of not so great if I didn't have my childhood. So it's all connected to where I am. So one of the cool things was with Cindy is that, like, there were milestones after we met, like jobs, because I couldn't keep a job to save my life. She taught me what stability looked like. I wanted that. And she showed me how to have that, what that looked like in practice, not just in theory. What it looked like to struggle but still be okay. What it looked like to maybe not have all the money in the world, but to still make it work, to still eat, to still get your basic necessities. She taught me so much about being a normal person and a good person. So, 35. We're looking at, now I've been diagnosed with type 2 bipolar. I had the incident, and now I'm on a whole new journey. So what happened from meeting Cindy again and moving in with her to this point is that I was no longer the person I was for the decade prior to that. I wasn't using people. I wasn't calculated. I wasn't doing bad things. I wasn't making as many bad choices or as many bad decisions. Like, I had come down a lot and reframed myself quite significantly. I had started to show compassion for the world, compassion for others. I started to grow into myself, like who I was. And I was able to do all of that because I had a safety net, Cindy. She gave me a safety net, and it was something that she will never know because I'll never be able to articulate, truthfully, how important she was in changing my life. So now I'm reaching new milestones. I'm celebrating a year at one job and a year and a half. And then, I'm celebrating now 5 years at the job, or 6 years sustainably employed, which are huge things for me in my life because they didn't exist before. I'm doing the internal work of reframing my internal dialogue, which I spoke about in the first episode as well, is it was a dumpster fire. It was trash. I felt I had a lot of self-loathing. Every thought was a negative thought, and I treated myself like garbage. It was a way, but it was how I treated a lot of people in my early 20s externally. Just no value, worthless. Full circle karma, maybe. And then I had to take every single thought that I was having, catch it, and then reframe it, and then put it back in. And I spoke about in the first podcast how after 6 months, I have my first day of no negativity in my mind. But the work didn't stop there. The work continued for years and years and years, and then like I said, I was employed for 6 years consecutively, two different companies, but sustainably and consecutively until I was packaged out in November. But that work continued, and what's interesting is that I think throughout the pandemic, I lost some of my coping skills and some of my success, if you will. Like I almost relapsed in how well my brain was at being positive or how well I could combat anxiety. And my anxiety was really high compared to what it had been for say the last like 5 years. Which I think it's not a shock. The pandemic changed everyone on some level. It changed everyone. And so then I was like, at first I went and I was like, well, why is this happening? I'm like, I've done the work, and I kind of went on this sort of like, woe is me pity party. And then was really like, okay, no, you have the tools. You've done this already. So let's start working this together. And, grabbing the thoughts and reframing them and putting them back inside. And then also just sort of the excessive thought, the overthinking sort of returned with a vengeance a little bit. And I've mentioned before that I still overthink. That's a part of who I am. It's just who I am. So, but I had to come to terms with the fact that it's who I am. I'm not going to fight it, but I need to show myself immense kindness when it happens. Otherwise, it's going to consume me. So when it happens now, I'm like, you're having this sort of thought, okay, but you're going to be okay. History has shown you, resiliency has shown you that you're going to be okay. So the whole purpose of this particular conversation today for this podcast is the fact that change is possible. And, there are so many people out there who have made mistakes, who have lived lives that maybe they're not super proud of. And I want you to know that change is possible because, like I said, I went through all of these stages, and sure, not everyone's going to get a Cindy, right? But not everyone needs a Cindy to tell them they want better or they can do better. I just happen to need a Cindy in that particular period of my life. And her unconditional love is what changed me. So wherever you are right now, if you're living a life that you're not super happy with, or if you want to be better or in any way, shape, or form, you can do it, because I am living proof. And, right now I'm just some dude on a podcast who you could think, oh, he's faking it. And that's fine. You can feel that way. I do have the receipts because I've worked for 5 years with the same people, and those people know who I am just by a default. I'm kind, I am compassionate, I am caring, I will go the extra mile to build you up. That's where I find my joy. I want people to feel good. I want to praise people, and I am working on doing that for myself as well. And that's the part of stepping out from behind fear. Like, that's my way of doing it for me. But the person I am today is a happy, aware, so completely different than I was when I was in my 20s, than I was prior to 35. And it's not immediate. It's not, you don't flip or snap your fingers and it happens. You have to make a conscious decision that you want to change, that you want better for yourself, that you want better for like your mind, your heart, your life. But then there's also the component of accountability. You have to hold yourself accountable, but do so with kindness, because don't trash talk yourself is what I'm trying to say. It's not healthy for you, right? You have to be kind and gentle, and you have to know that as you're making any change in your life, you have to treat that change and yourself as a child, and you have to show that kindness, show that patience, that gentleness to them to help them understand. And when I say them, you understand that this takes time and nothing's going to happen overnight. Sometimes it's going to take a lot longer than you ever anticipated. What I would suggest from my own personal experience is look for the tiny things and then celebrate them. So, it took 6 months of reprogramming my brain to have a day without negative thoughts. That's actually a massive celebration. And I did massively celebrate that. And I still talk about it today. But during the previous 6 months, there were little things that would happen that I would congratulate myself for and say, like, look, you're doing the work. You can do this. And one of the things that I want to say also is that we need to focus a lot on self-validation. No one can do the change for you. That would be wonderful. Pay $1,500 and tomorrow you're going to be a different person, or you're going to have the discipline to do whatever. Your internal dialogue is going to shift to being like a super healthy, happy person. That would be lovely. I would have spent $1,500 times 1,000 already. Self-validation, self-acceptance, self-kindness, and self-love. The goal of this podcast is to not just say to anybody listening that you can change, but I think anyone in this world can change on a fundamental level if they put in the work. And what is it? 42, so 7 years. I'll be 43 this summer, so 8 years almost post change. Let me rephrase that. 8 years in change. And I'm still on a journey. I don't ever want it to stop. I like the fact that I can literally not enjoy something about myself and go on the inside and say, okay, how are we going to work on reframing this? And I reframe every day. Not to the degree I did at 35 when I started. There's still little things that happen that I'm like, you know what? Let's take that thought and let's kind of change it around. So everyone makes mistakes. Everyone at some point in their lives, actually, maybe not everyone. Everyone makes mistakes. We know this, but a lot of people follow paths that are maybe not so good or doesn't serve them. People in every instance, no matter who you are, where you are today, can change. It's if you didn't realize this before this podcast, please know that this is in fact true. And it's literally the opposite of, that saying that people don't change. And that's also true, because for people to change, they have to want to, right? There has to be a genuine desire inside them saying that they want to change. And the takeaway is, if you want to change, you can change. It won't happen overnight, but you can do it. So that's it for me today. Thank you very much for listening in. You can, as always, follow me at author CK Sims on TikTok and Instagram. You can view the video version of this on YouTube, same handle. And this podcast is out wherever podcast airs. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, you can head on over to cksims.com, where you'll find blog in my Noggin, which is my blog, and the contact page. So you can head on the contact page and shoot me a message about sponsoring the show. If you are someone who has a story to tell, who has overcome and thrived, or who have changed their lives, and I want to hear from you. So also head to cksims.com and fill out the contact page, and let's get you on the show so we can talk about that. Until next time, I want you to get out there and live your wildest dreams.